Terrible. Okay. Um, so that's the background to this whole thing, right? What we're talking about, to reiterate, what we're talking about is the ability to teach climate across the curriculum as broadly as possible. And I would make the argument that there's many things we can do to solve the problem of climate change. We're not going to make it go away ever. It's here. It's done. It's a done deal. The question is, how bad is it going to get? That's the piece we need to focus on. And the argument I'm trying to make in this session is that education is a huge part of this framework. I've had students come into my class, first year students, that had not a clue what sustainability is or what climate change is or why it matters, what they should be paying attention to. They have no idea. So it's revelatory for them to take a class at college. That's the piece we want to change. What we want, what I want at least, and I think that you guys share this opinion, what we want is to have an activated group of young people come into college with a decent background in climate change and ready to take on the serious work of figuring out how do we make this happen. There's this whole meme of wicked problems, complex systems, where the argument is that there in a complex system world, there's no singularity in reality. Reality is not this one thing. Depending on your perspective, depending on your purpose, depending on the scale that you use to make your depictions, you'll get different realities. It's the same thing, but to reflect it in our mental models, we have to distill it down to some kind of subsystem. If that's true, then the only way to deal with complex systems in any field is to have multiple stakeholders engage with it at the same time and give multiple depictions. So you get, say, for instance, we're doing exactly this exercise that we're doing here. And the idea is to come up with 3 recommendations for the state if it wants to see its mandate be successful. What are the 3 things the state can do, right? That's the objective of the exercise. What needs to happen in terms of complex system thinking is you need to have multiple voices in the room. Everybody has a vested interest in the sense of being focused on some particular preconception of what the problem is. Rather than try to be objective, we say don't be objective. Instead, be subjective, but be intelligently subjective. Do the subjective work, but from the point of view of consolidating it with other people's views, very mindfully stitching it together into a rich depiction. And that way we might come to a place which is more successful. Climate change, in my view, is actually not a particularly complex system in the sense that we know what the phenomena are. We know this thing very well. We know how climate change happens. We know why we have to stop it. We know what we need to do to stop it. The thing is, we look for a magic bullet. We want the one thing that's going to solve this problem for us, and it doesn't work that way. It has to be multiple prongs. So Paul Hawken's book, Drawdown, which has now become a project, and it's got all kinds of social artifacts built around it, and it's got groups across the country and websites with solutions and so on and so forth. They did a really decent piece of work that is useful to all of us. The book is called Drawdown. And the argument is, if you take all the things that we think will make a difference to the climate change situation we're up against, which of these has what kind of bang for the buck do you get from each one of these? That's the question, right? How do you do this thing? What is the effective way of teaching? What are some of the obstacles in the current system that keep us from being successful at this model? I hope that sort of sets the stage sufficiently so we can move on from here. Is that all right? Okay. This is why cameras are handy. It showed me nodding heads. Okay, so second part of our session today is the 5 speakers that we have. And I'm going to introduce them very briefly. They're going to give you a more full introduction of themselves when they start to speak. Every person gets 10 minutes at the outside. I will be a timekeeper and I will say when it is time. Uh, 10 minutes presentation from each from the particular perspective that we've discussed amongst ourselves. Jamie is going to talk about mental models. Harriet is going to talk about teaching and classroom work and pedagogy. And Carrie is going to talk about resources that can be brought from the sciences into the field of teaching climate change across the curriculum. And so we'll do that work. Nora is from Duke Farms, and I forget the exact title, Nora, you can clarify that for us when you come on. But she's in charge of all the community education work that Duke Farms does, which is quite substantial. They do a lot of outreach on an everyday basis to people that come to visit Duke Farms. And it's a wonderful place to go. If you haven't been there, you should really make it an effort. And finally, we have Swan. Swan is a high school student in West Orange, and she's very savvy. She's thought about this a lot from the student's point of view, right? So what you'll notice in each of the speakers is there's a shift in perspective in every case. We are shifting how we think about the problem by switching between panelists. 10 minutes each, close that, 10 minutes of discussion amongst the panelists, and then we do the breakout rooms. In the breakout rooms, we go deeper into what we heard in the first hour and come up with 3 recommendations for your level of education. Each group will have to designate a note taker. I'm not going to try to mandate that, but you should pick one person who's going to keep records. Unfortunately, we don't have any way of recording that portion of the session. It'd be really great if somebody came up with a way of recording 3 or 4 breakout rooms at the same time. It doesn't work. So we need note taking. That's important. 15 minutes of brainstorm, 20 if you like. If you really get going, we can extend it a little more. And then we come back into the main room and have a closeout discussion on what has surfaced in the process of this uh, evening. How did it play out? What did you get from it? What are some of the questions that you have that were not answered in the session? Like that. Yes? We good with this? Okay. So without much hesitation, I will pass it off to Jamie, who's going to tell us a bit about her own world and then the frame that she's going to bring to bear, and finally what she has to say about the subject. Jamie, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks, Ash. Hi, everybody. So I'm just going to jump right in the interest of time. So let's see. Okay. So I'm going to look and make sure everybody can see that. Okay. Okay, great. So I'm at the Cloud Institute, and we work primarily pre-K to 12, teacher education, curriculum design, coaching, a lot of organizational change, and school community partnerships. And today I thought I would just focus in on what I think are a few things that people need to know in order to understand what's going on with climate change. So here we go. So the first thing, this is a quote from Barry Richmond. It's a systems thinking saying, all systems are perfectly designed to get the results they get. So if we have a situation called climate change, that's a symptom of global warming, it's a symptom of unsustainability, which is a symptom of not being educated for a sustainable future. So it's always about the thinking, because thinking drives behavior and behavior causes results. So there is a reason why we're in this situation. And we love Einstein's quote, the significant problems we face can't be solved with the same thinking that was used to create them in the first place. So it will require a different way of thinking to get to a different result. One of the things that's really quite useful is, and this is a concept we use in ecological economics and sustainable economics, ecosystem services. People will look out into a prairie and say, if there's nothing, no buildings there, human activity, they say there's nothing there. But of course, in fact, there's all kinds of things going on there. And of course, we know that regulating the climate is one of the functions that the Earth actually provides. It is a service we get for free from nature. And there are many other services we get for free. In fact, they try to put a dollar value on these ecosystem services, and it's, of course, trillions of dollars. The replacement value, we can't afford it. And so that's something that's quite useful for people. When I chose the things I wanted to talk about tonight, it's based on what I see people don't know and don't understand. And so this is something, this is a term that most people have never heard of. So it's quite useful for them to know that the climate, that the Earth does know how to regulate its own climate. And of course, you can disrupt any functional system, but it's useful to know that. There are other laws and principles derived from nature, and I won't go into detail on them, but there have been 7 of them that we see again and again. People have no idea. There's no such place as a way. It's the first and second laws of thermodynamics. 2 out of every 1,000 people I speak to remember what that one means. Diversity makes life possible. It's not something we should be learning to tolerate. There is no life on this planet without diversity of every kind. All systems have limits. It's not a lack of, it's not scarcity. It's not a loss of autonomy. To respect limits, constraints drive creativity. And we need to understand that. We're all in this together. We're interdependent on each other and the living systems upon which we all depend. Solutions are definitely local and locally appropriate. Life organizes towards life. In other words, something always makes it so far on this planet. And as an educator for a sustainable future, I would like humans to be a part of that mix. And of course, things change. These are really, really non-negotiable principles and laws derived from nature. Most people don't know and haven't even thought about them. Also useful to remember that the economy is not the most important place to be in the middle. Being in the middle means you're the system most dependent on the other systems. And all of these systems, of course, are powered by the sun at the end of the day. Um, Another really important concept I think everybody needs to understand is stocks and flows. It's a system dynamics concept. Stocks are entities that can accumulate or can be depleted, like water in a bathtub. Flows make the stocks increase or decrease. So think of a faucet and a drain. The water comes in and it goes out. Everybody understands bathtub. So now we can apply that basic concept to a few situations. So with money, we happen to understand that you can't take out more money faster than you put back in. Every business person knows that. Because if you do, it's unsustainable. You can do anything you want for a little time, but you can't keep doing that. Another example is fish stocks. If you take out more faster than the replenishment rate, it's unsustainable. People get that. Um, this is the ecological footprint. You can take out more biocapacity faster than the Earth is able to restore and replenish it. That is not something everybody understands, but if you understand stocks and flows, you can see where if your demand is greater than your supply, in the long run, that's not going to work out very well. And it works the other way too. If you put in too much faster than the body can take out, you're going to accumulate resources, and it's going to be unhealthy and unsustainable if you exceed the thresholds of health doing so. If you can understand all of that, you can understand what's going on with climate change. And this is a simulation that used to be live. We're trying to get it back online. But it shows you a bathtub of an accumulation of CO2, and you've got a faucet and a drain. And they ran the simulation, and what you can see is if you allow the CO2 emissions to keep going, of course, the bathtub overflows. If you try to level off emissions, it still overflows because there's a delay in the system, like a thermostat is a delay. You can switch the temperature, but it takes a little while for it to catch up. And then they tried to reduce emissions 80% by 2050, and suddenly the emissions leveled off. Once you understand stocks and flows, it's very easy to understand what's going on in our climate. Another really important thing I think is useful for people to understand how to do, which is to distinguish problems from symptoms. We call it a shifting the burden archetype. It's a classic archetype in system dynamics that explains really well what happens when you do that. And in a nutshell, climate change is a symptom of global warming, which is a symptom of unsustainable behavior, human behavior on the planet. And so if you treat a symptom, you are likely to create a symptomatic solution, which in the short run works. But what happens over time? Those symptomatic solutions could in fact create unintended consequences. I don't think of them as side effects because then people don't pay attention to them, like those pharmaceutical commercials. Those unintended consequences then can have an opposite effect on the fundamental solution. So if we go upstream and we say what we need to do is behave sustainably and even contribute to the regenerative capacity of our earth and our social systems, then we're likely to get to a fundamental solution that solves more than one problem at a time and minimizes the creation of new problems. So that's quite a useful little framework, I think, that's very useful. Just do what we call problem finding before problem solving. And then finally, I think it's really useful to look at Robert Fritz's creative tension and structural tension, that when our vision of the future is really far from our current reality, like a rubber band, there's going to be structural tension. And if it's too much tension, the rubber band will break and there will be no movement. If there's not enough, there will still be no movement. So we want to make sure that people understand this is a big, big, important vision of the future that we have. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but we need to keep that structural tension there so that it seeks resolution. And by that, it may involve some emotional tension, but ultimately we should get to the creative tension that we need to solve the problems that we need to solve. And so here's a summary of where I went, and we can talk more about it in the breakout rooms. And this is our framework. We do believe the unit of change is schools and communities learning and working together for the future we want. And I will stop there. How did I do on time, Ash?
Hang on the nose. Very nicely done. Thank you,
Tap the
Edith.
power of limits.
Yep, works very well. Harriet, you want to take it away?
Yes, I
Tell
do.
tell us a little bit about yourself, the book you just wrote, and then take it wherever you want.
I will do so. I am going to share my screen and start up here first. So it's wonderful to see so many friends and colleagues in the audience as well. And let me introduce myself a little bit and then move into these presentations. And I look forward to our conversation because there's so much knowledge here in the room. So I am happy to be an adjunct professor at Ramapo College, where I teach climate change and society and world sustainability. And I'm going to get into that in a moment because that's sort of the crux of what I want to talk about. But I'm also an informal educator, and I've spent close to more than 25 years now in that capacity. Also, as an economist, I worked with the International Monetary Fund, with provincial governments in Canada. Um, I did a training with Al Gore shortly after he launched his film An Inconvenient Truth, now 14 years ago, and was one of the first to train with his organization called the Climate Reality Project, which moved me forward into the importance of education on climate in waking people up to the realities that we face. And within a few years, I set up an organization called Climate Mama to talk to parents about the climate crisis, about what we could do to answer those questions that our children are asking us, but also to educate ourselves about it. And that has been my primary job for me these past now 12 years. It has morphed and changed over time. As Ash said, just this past year in 2020, I had a book come out called How to Talk to Your Kids About Climate Change. Turning Angst into Action. I'm thrilled to share with you. It is up for 2 Book of the Year awards this year. And I share that not just to give myself a pat on the back, but to say that it's in with book awards that are not for environment or sustainability or climate. They're for the general public. They're for the publishing community and the library community around the country. And that they would choose a climate book, a book about talking about climate to our children as one of their finalists and one of their award winners, I think says something for all of us about why we're here and why we're having this discussion. People are interested. Everyone here in the room, or most people, the colleagues and friends I see, have been working on this for decades and years. And we've laid this foundation, but we are at a moment in time where things have changed and we are at a turning point, and we can, as the stage was set by Jamie setting the broad picture of what we're facing, and us sharing, our discussion and our conversation tonight, we are at that great turning, if you're familiar with Joanna Macy's work, or at a moment where it's time, all of this work where we felt maybe people weren't listening or all rested on our shoulders, that is so much bigger now. The arms are there, and it's intergenerational in nature. It cannot be put on the shoulders of our youth, which I hear in some circles. Oh, our youth have woken up. Nor can it be put on the shoulders of our educators, our parents, our corporations alone. It's a shared responsibility. So I want to just premise it by sharing that. And I want to have you look at a few quotes. These are quotes actually from a homework assignment for my World Sustainability students. They are working on group projects right now to create, as part of actually this Making Climate a Class, a short video. They got to pick the K through 12 grade level they wanted to look at. They're going to come up with a resource list, and they're putting together a short video that a teacher could use to introduce a lesson plan. And I asked them in their outline for the project to share with me when they first learned about climate. And as Ashwani shared with us in the very beginning, I think that as those of us that are professors here, many of us are hearing from our students who are choosing to take sustainability courses that this is really the first time that they've had that opportunity to really become immersed in it in a big way. And that is not okay. These are just a sampling of some of the comments from some students, but most of them were like that, where they learned about climate or sustainability and where they remember learning about it in their K through 12 experience is because they had a special teacher, usually. It was someone that brought it in, they cared about it, and they shared that. Many students tell me it came from their parents, from being out in nature, from the things they did on family vacations. But formally learning about the climate crisis wasn't part of their formal learning, or was a very small part of their formal learning. And so Making Climate a Class is more than giving it just a mandate, right? Yes, it's exciting what we have here in New Jersey, but a mandate alone without funding to support teacher training, without funding for curriculum sources, just is another burden on teachers' shoulders. And so I think we have to talk about that as well too. But without a mandate, it doesn't push us forward. So it's that chicken and egg thing. We need everything. We need it all. But we need it to start because we're facing an emergency, as was shared and as we all know. So how do we do that? So I want to just talk a little bit about what we're doing at Ramapo College directly as it relates to my experience there. And you have, Mike Edelstein and Ashwani, who are, have been for decades and more building out the sustainability and education program at Ramapo, for decades and decades. But on their shoulders and on what we're doing, we offer some gen ed courses that anyone can take from any subject area. World sustainability, it's offered in, 8 or 9 or more sessions each semester, and climate is a part of that. And we, get students from nursing, from education, from marketing. These are 200 level courses, and every college should offer something like that where anyone can take those classes. We started offering in the fall of 2019 at a gen ed class called Climate Change and Society, which I teach, which you have to take world sustainability to get into, but it does a deeper dive into the subject of climate and helps build the knowledge from policy perspective, but also from a science perspective, because I think you need, both of those to be able to build self-efficacy, right? We need students at, whether they're in first grade, second grade, or third grade, to see around them that other students are making change and making action. And how do we build that? We build that by building knowledge and building strength and seeing that others are being able to take action and move things forward. So that comes through formal education, K through 12 and higher. So we need that mandate that we have now. We need to ask for more and keep pushing and have New Jersey be a true example for the rest of the country on how we can do that. And it takes a village and more. And so it takes all of you here and many more to formalize that, to make it happen. But we have that mandate, so we're moving it forward. It is also done through informal education as well. And I, as I mentioned, have been involved with an organization called the Climate Reality Project since its inception back in 2007. It's an informal training program, an informal education training program to have people learn about the climate crisis and go back into their communities so that they can then educate others. And there are many organizations that do this. This is one that I think is very successful in what it does. And as I said, this is now a quote from my book, but this is a project, as Ashwani shared, that is lifelong, right? We are living with the climate crisis for the rest of our lives. That's something we've got to get comfortable with as educators, as parents, as students, in every way, shape, and form. We've got to get comfortable with it, perhaps in a very uncomfortable way, but we need to get comfortable with it. And we need to move beyond our anger. We need to move beyond our grief. We need to move beyond our fear and move through and see everything through a lens of the climate crisis. How are we, fortunate in some strange way to be alive at this opportunity where everything we do matters. So as educators, we need to inform and advise our students. They don't need to be a scientist to solve the climate crisis or to help slow down the climate crisis. If they're an artist or an illustrator, that's their passion, then that is how they can pursue and how we need to teach them. And that's why climate needs to be taught as a class, cross-curricular, which is the mandate that's been established in New Jersey to actually do that. So how do we move through fear, through action, as each one of us, as educators, as students, as citizens, companies, civil society, houses of worship? We are going to talk about that throughout the rest of this evening. But there is a role for each of us to push this mandate forward in a much more formal top-down and also bottom-up role. It can't be only on our teachers' shoulders. They're dealing with so much. We as professors, as K through 12 educators, online, offline, every which way, and then to say in September, well, now you have to teach this. We need to help build that in so that those questions that I asked my students that they told me, we don't hear that anymore. When they come to us in college, they are well prepared. We can move further and farther along in the story because they know everything there is to know about why climate change is happening, what they can do about it, how they can be empowered to take action, because they took action when they were in first grade and second grade and middle school and high school and beyond. So we have our responsibility now at this moment of change to actually dig in and make sure that it happens. And again, I think my 10 minutes are up, and so I am going to stop. and we'll move on to the next speaker. But I look forward to what we can together come together with to share as part of the video of this for people throughout the year to learn from each of you, because you each have so much power and experience. So I'm looking forward to seeing that as well too. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and pass it back to you, Ash. Thank you.
Harriet. Nicely done. So we move now to Nora. No, wait, sorry, wrong sheet of paper. Carrie, you want to go next?
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Ash. Okay. Can you all see my screen, I hope? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks everybody for joining us today. My name's Carrie Ferraro. I am at Rutgers University. I wear multiple hats there. But one of my larger hats, I should say, I guess, is the Associate Director of the Coastal Climate Risk and Resilience Initiative at Rutgers. It's a program that takes students from across the university, engineers, social scientists, natural scientists, policy students, and teaches them to work together and also to engage with stakeholders in order to make the coast more resilient to climate change. Today, I am wanted to speak a little bit about another group that I work with, which is the New Jersey Climate Change Resource Center, which is also housed at Rutgers, and to talk a little bit about some of the resources that they provide to support not only policy and policymakers, but also local communities and educators and individual citizens. So just a bit about the New Jersey Climate Change Resource Center. It was established by law here in New Jersey in January 2020. And its mission, hopefully this will change, is to create and support the use of impartial and actionable science to advance state and local efforts in order to adapt to and mitigate a changing climate here in New Jersey. The center is facilitated by the Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy at Rutgers, as well as the Rutgers Climate Institute. So the New Jersey Climate Change Resource Center, or NJCCRC, because it's such a mouthful, engages in a couple of things. Actionable science, where it's research with real world applications. They provide tools and techniques, providing practical support, as well as communication, getting that information out there, but also speaking with different stakeholders in the area. So today what I thought I would do is just talk to you a little bit about some of the resources that are on our website. And I put the website URL at the bottom. So the first resource I wanted to talk about were our climate briefs. So the climate briefs provide information on a whole bunch of topics. I've listed some here, like sea level rise, health and equity, farming and food, greenhouse gas reduction, insurance, ocean acidification, adaptation strategies, just a whole bunch of, it's a wealth of information, short briefs that you can kind of catch up on what's happening. So the second thing that kind of builds upon these briefs are our climate change stories. And these climate stories section of the website contains a series of videos. Some are short, like 2 minutes, and some are a little bit longer, like 30 minutes, on both the impacts of climate change and how they're being addressed. Again, these videos cover the interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary nature of climate change. So they focus on things like structural solutions and like living shorelines, the economic and health benefits of fighting climate change, how corporations and are investing in climate action, and how we can improve the well-being of our more vulnerable communities here in New Jersey. There's even a video, which I thought was kind of interesting, on how plant biologists are working to employ more sophisticated tools to meet the challenges of climate change. The third resource I wanted to highlight was our decision maker tools. This is a suite of online tools that can help communities or even individuals make decisions. To be honest, while the tools are mostly geared towards professional planners and there's some technical language, I have personally used them with high school and undergraduate students and educators. There's tutorials and tips throughout the tools. And of course, if you have any questions on how to use these tools, you can reach out to me. And if I can't answer them, I can connect you to the people that created the tools. So among the tools that we have are our NJ Flood Mapper, which as an oceanographer is my favorite. It's an interactive mapping tool that helps you look at the your flood exposure based on the science of what we have for now on sea level rise and other parameters like hurricane surge and flood zones. And you can also, the really nice thing about this tool is, again, bringing all the different elements of climate change together. On top of this flood map, you can also put layers of infrastructure. So where are our schools? Where are our hospitals? What areas do we need to protect? What are some environmental hazards? Where are some of these contaminated sites that we really don't want to be flooded and spread? Where's the marsh and open space areas? So where are some of these buffers potentially? Social vulnerability. So where are those that are the most vulnerable to climate change living? And also insurance and land use. The second tool that we have here are the municipal snapshots. So for each of the New Jersey municipalities, there's information about the people, the places, and the assets that could potentially be at risk from climate impacts. It's a good place to start from when you're thinking about what solutions you need to implement in your town. And the last tool I wanted to highlight here is the New Jersey Forest Adapt tool. And what this shows is kind of changes in plant hardiness and in heat zones, how plant species or distribution will change, daily minimum, maximum temperatures, basically how the plants in the forest will change under different climate scenarios and multiple timelines over different years. So the next resource on our website are our webinars. Hopefully we'll have conferences in the future, in-person conferences in the future, but for now we're hosting some webinars. And the recordings for all of our previous webinars are up on the website. And again, these cover a variety of subjects. We had a couple that I thought were really interesting on preserving historical buildings from flooding and also other climate change impacts. But we've also had webinars on reducing residential carbon footprint. So your house, how can you make your house more emit less greenhouse gases, or use less energy is really what I'm trying to say. And so I thought this could be a time for a shameless plug. Our next webinar is on Friday. We're going to have some speakers that will talk about the impacts of climate change on our coastal forests. And it's open to everyone. We just ask that you register. So I hope you'll join us. Okay, the last thing, because I don't want to talk too much about this, is the reports and research on the website. So if you're looking for the latest information on, for say, offshore wind planning or water supply, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of reports and publications that are on this site. It also has a report on something that all the speakers I think mentioned at this point, of how do you bring people from different backgrounds and values and needs together to the table and work with these folks to do some planning to become more resilient. So again, there's the website is up there, and all these resources can really just be used to help you think more deeply about how you can make an impact and help reduce the effects of climate change. We're also on Facebook and Twitter and have a YouTube channel. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and I really look forward to speaking with you all. I will
Thank
try
you.
and stop sharing.
Thank you, Carrie. Very nicely done. So, Nora, you want to go next?
Sure, sounds great. Let me see if I could do this. After a year, you'd think I'd know how to do it, but I still mess it up. Okay. Let's see. Okay, can you all see this?
Perfectly.
Perfect. Okay. Hi, my name is Nora DiChiara. I'm the Director of Programs and Strategic Planning at Duke Farms. Do a little bit of everything. We handle communications, media, volunteering, education, frontline education, PR, marketing, all that kind of fun stuff. So they asked me to do a section on community education on climate change. So this is my presentation. So a little bit about Duke Farms really quickly. I'm just going to give a brief view of what we do for those of you who have never been there. I hope you come. We are a 2,700 acre property in Hillsborough, New Jersey. We're open to the public, we're for free, where we have very, very low cost programs for our visitors. But generally, we have over 300 programs a year. In a non-pandemic year, we have over 300 programs in a year, although I think we blew that away with online programs this year, so I don't know. We usually host several thousand school kids every year. We have about 170,000 visitors, both for recreational opportunities, but we do have on-site communication devices, interpretation, things like that. And we also have pop-up education. So when you come to Duke Farms and you may be going hiking or biking, we are actually teaching you things. So, and yes, we are not just bald eagles, although this time of the year, it definitely feels like that is all we do. So climate change communication, or climate change education is weaved into everything that we do. So even if you come for a birding program, we're going to talk about climate change. If you come for a tree program, we're going to talk about climate change. You come into the cafe, we're going to talk about the footprints of what you're eating. So pretty interesting place. Okay, I'm working off of 2 computers, so if I go back and forth, that's what's going on. I'm not having a seizure. So interfacing with the public, that's Ash called me and said, hey, tell me what works. And I said, okay, no problem. I got it. So we do a lot of engaging, inspiring, a lot of talking about science, a lot of hands-on activities, and a lot of empowering our visitors. And then one of the things that we feel is very important is engaging those early learners. I think we all can agree to that, but it's one of those things where we make sure that even with our early learner programs, we are teaching about the basics of living things. We're talking about what they need to survive and establishing relationships between their needs and where they live, the characteristics of living things, how plants and animals use external parts to help them survive and grow. And then we branch off with that with older kids, and we talk about relationships and habitats, establishing cause and effect, and so on and so forth. And this is just leading people down the path of education that builds a better understanding about climate change. So climate in our backyard. So this is something that we like to do with all of our programs, is really kind of talk about and engage people with what's going on at a local level, local and regional level. That's really important because those are the kind of things that we understand and we perceive that it's like very valuable. So we do a lot of talking about impacts on like a Jersey level, and we use a lot of data from Carrie's office, and we talk about what's going on, flooding, shore erosion, all these things, harder storms, all of these things. But we also kind of talk about it as a global issue, because we are all interconnected. What we do on a local level is going to have regional, national, international impacts. And we do talk about that interconnectedness and a global scale. And we also talk about climate issues on an intersectional social justice issue. So it's not just us, it's about the people that we impact when we relay our garbage into communities and things like that. So not just what we're looking at. We also talk a lot about science, very important. We don't really talk about deniers. We don't talk about, some people deny, we don't do that. We just talk about science. We use a lot of new research that's even coming out of Duke Farms. We incorporate into what we're doing, communicating and educating with the public. We express a lot of evidence, not beliefs, but evidence. And we engage people of all ages with citizen science opportunities. That is a fantastic way to get people involved. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And the other thing I want to say is it's not just scientists who are communicating about these things, and it's not just scientists who can add to these conversations. I think it's really important to really talk about interdisciplinary implementation, visual performing arts, social studies, technology. It really could be weaved into everything that we do. And all of these people, artists, communicators, performing artists, teachers, technologists, can be invited to the table and express, climate change education. And I put this really neat visual art that I saw. It's a participatory art down in Florida. 6,000 households installed underwater homeowners association signs based on the municipality's level of elevation range to show how many feet of melted water must rise in order to before a specific property is underwater. So it's really using science, but using art and using visual arts in order to explain science. So we did this at Duke Farms over the pandemic. A lot of us knitted a scarf that had temperature changes. So I didn't have a picture of that, but it's another way of kind of explaining differences, changes. So one of the things that we're really into at Duke Farms is hands-on for all ages. So hands-on opportunities, hands-on labs, data models, service projects, citizen science, gardening, planting. By moving around data, parts, things, students of all types are able to understand the basic things that early age learners learn, changes, have impacts. And citizen science allows for a lot of involvement of all ages and so that they understand and support science. We all kind of need to advocate for good science. And the more we have people involved in the scientific process and adding to a larger body of science, that builds those connections. So we have a lot of opportunities for hands-on engagement, not only of actual hands-on engagement of things, we have a hands-on engagement of data. That's important too. A lot of resources that are out there. Citizen science, we do at Duke Farms. We do the Cocoa Ross weather monitoring. We do Firefly Watch, Monarch Watch, Phenology Network, NAB accounts, Christmas bird counts, all of these things. So, So one of the things that we believe also is like encouraging participation. So with information plus inspiration inspires action. And action is not only protesting, as you see, it's also writing letters. It is engaging policymakers. It is engaging family members. If you are a young student, you can talk to your parents. You can talk to your grandparents. It's not just, it's participation. So you can work with Girl Scouts and do a community project. So it's a little bit of everything. And one of the things that we try to weave into all of our programs, again, is positivity. That the situation may be dire. And I know a lot of people on this call, we've been doing this for a long time. It's kind of like a little bit angering that, 30 years after I learned these concepts in high school, that we're still talking about it and we're still moving towards it. Like, come on. But we also have to realize that it's an opportunity to engage and inspire our next generation and the current generations, and really embrace that this is not an insurmountable issue. We are all here to contribute, we're all here to engage, and we're all in here to inspire change and not apathy. So I put in some resources. If anyone wants this, just email me. I've got a lot of resources. I tried to outline it, and then I was like, this is freaking awesome. So I just put it all in there. If you want to just email me. And the last thing that I want to talk about really quickly is that we're all in this together and we're all kind of tinkering away at this. So really try to implement whatever you can, really kind of evaluate, collaborate with others, pivot, make adjustments, and then re-implement again. The time now is not to sit there and get the best of the best of the best. We just have to do this. We have to hop in and make adaptations as we move on. So throw some spaghetti at the wall, get some programs going, get some engagement going, and we'll all hopefully get better at this. So if anyone has any questions, you can let me know in the chat, but here is my contact information. I welcome anyone to get in touch with me. I am always available. So that is it. Stop share. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nora. Very well done. So Swan, you want to close it out for us?
Yeah. Speakers asked to.
No, speak slow.
Okay. Everyone can see my screen?
It's coming. It's there.
Okay. So, like everyone here today, I want to talk about climate education, but specifically, I want to focus on student empowerment. First, just a quick intro, a little bit about me. My name is Samprita Mura. It's a bit of a mouthful, and I'm a freshman at West Orange High School, as well as a member of the New Jersey Student Sustainability Coalition, which is a statewide coalition of high school and college students working, basically to the name, to make New Jersey more sustainable. There, separate from this, I am the campaign co-coordinator for our Green Amendment campaign, the addition of an environmental rights amendment to our state's constitution. But most relevant to today, I'm also the vice president of our Fight for Green Environmental Club at West Orange High School. And that's where I've been working on a cooperation between my club and trying to work with the Board of Education to institute the new climate education requirements that were talked about earlier, actually on the ground and in our schools. So today, just a quick rundown of what I'm going to talk about. First, kind of zooming in micro, what's happening in West Orange, what my specific club is doing in our town. Then taking a step back, going macro, why is student empowerment so important? Why are we fighting for it on this local level? And then once we establish why student empowerment is so important, how can teachers actually empower students in the classroom? So first, what is happening in West Orange? Where am I coming from? Well, our efforts as a club, Fight for Green, were really inspired by the updated NJSLS requirements that include climate education in all subjects K through 12 that again were mentioned at the very beginning of this event. So this is something young people, we've been asking for this for a long time, working for a lot of people. So we were very excited. But still, we were concerned about whether this would be effectively implemented because young people have probably what is a healthy amount of skepticism about climate action from the higher ups by this point. So I wanted to make sure that we were going to be actually involved in the process to make sure the changes were being effectively implemented. To this end, we've started having meetings with those you could call people in charge. We've met with our superintendent, telling him that this is a priority for us and we want him to really put this in big discussions and not just focus on other things. And then we've also talked to our science supervisor, discussion we'll talk about a little bit more later. We had a lot of students go to a Board of Ed meeting and make public comments, bringing this to the attention of all of our board members, many of whom this was not on their radar at all. And right now we have requested a meeting with the assistant superintendent, who in my district is really the one who is in charge of curriculum on the district level. So that is something we were hoping for. And guiding us in all of this is our memo on climate education. So we called it our memo to the superintendent, but really we sent this to a lot of people, and it really just outlined our goals for climate education, specifically in West Orange schools. This includes how we want students to be involved in the educational process, so both adapting the curriculum to meet these new standards as well as in the future. So what we really wanted was student representation in all discussions about climate curriculum, as obviously they need to change the curriculum in order to meet these new standards. And then moving forward, we also wanted to see a form of long-term student input. Climate crisis, it's an ongoing problem. The situation is changing. We're learning new things. Obviously, current events too, you need to keep those updated. So we wanted that form of student input to keep curriculum up to date. And then we also were talking about student teachers, because a great way for older students to learn is teaching younger students. And that also builds independence and empowerment, which as you can tell from the way I opened this presentation, is very important to us. We also want to see specific things in the actual curriculum itself. First, very bare minimum, we want to see noticeable changes. We don't want our district to just say, oh, we already cover this, and that is something some people may try to claim. We want really local issues to be in the curriculum, and we want to see hands-on work on those local issues in our classrooms, which is, and outside the classroom too, but general lessons, which for reasons I will talk about later in the presentation. And then this is really goes without saying, we want to see the most up-to-date climate science. That's a bare minimum. And we also want discussions about environmental justice and racism, because this environmentalism was really a movement that it started very white, very tree huggery, but as we've seen, climate change does not affect everyone equally, and the environmental justice and racial justice issues are really incredibly intertwined. So you can't teach climate change without teaching environmental justice and the realities of racism. And then we also want climate change to be taught as an intersectional issue, because like we've talked about before at this event, it's not just a science issue. It touches all subject areas and all areas of life. So inviting us and those actions that I talked about before, we have in the future. First, we really just want to have more meetings. We want to talk with more people, specifically with our superintendent, especially. And then we've also discussed with our science supervisor jumping into department meetings, because we want to meet more directly with teachers and not just with administration moving forward. This kind of leads into the next thing want to do, which is teacher workshops. The main thing we learned from our discussion with our science supervisors is that teachers are not being given the tools they need in order to implement these new lessons and to meet these new standards. There's not enough resources for them. They have not been given what they need from the Board of Education in our town to do anything about this. And non-science teachers are in especially a bad spot, because obviously they don't have the background for this. But of course, teachers actually being able to teach this is essential to making these policy changes actually mean anything. Students, many of us who are really dedicated to this, we have a lot of the knowledge from research and from personal experience that we think is necessary to help teachers bridge this gap. So of course, we really need the Board of Education and the state to provide the resources for teachers, but in the meantime, we can also help, at least in our town. And then also on that thread of us kind of doing it ourselves, we do know that we can't expect the district to do everything. It moves slowly, and we don't expect them to be quite as effective as we'd like right away. Obviously, and very understandably, they are focused on COVID and safely opening our schools, so this is not a priority for them right now. So Fight for Green, our club itself, can help educate students. We've been talking with the Environmental Commission about improving student outreach and getting students involved in local projects. We can also hold events, teach lessons, and run initiatives to help educate students, as we've already done in the past. Though, again, still not nearly as good as the schools actually doing this themselves in a more formal way. So 2, why student empowerment? Why did I open this whole thing saying that I'm going to focus on this specifically? Well, you can teach climate change or climate science with many goals in mind. Some common ones include raising awareness about the issue or preparing students for future jobs and college majors. However, this is not what we're looking for. At least this can't be our main goal. When thinking about what our goal should be, the goal that's going to shape what climate education looks like, it has to be empowerment, specifically student empowerment. Why is it so important? Well, one, because there's a huge difference between empowerment and just raising awareness. So raising awareness, a lot of the times, it just aims for a very surface level understanding of the issue. It's very passive, and it doesn't fully engage students, especially because when you're raising awareness about climate, you're often raising awareness about climate issues, largely negative, and really turns students off. I know this because I've been the kid who's always been talking about these issues in class and has faced a largely unresponsive student body. Moreover, students are already, for the most part, somewhat aware. I don't know about other schools, but every single person I know knows climate change is an issue. It's a crisis, and they should be drastically changing their lives. The problem is that they're not doing anything about it. So raising awareness is really kind of pointless when you have people who are already aware. Instead, we need to focus on empowerment, which builds on this existing awareness. Empowerment aims for a fuller and a deeper understanding of the issue, and it's a lot more active. It engages students in actually taking part in this and being actors on the stage, rather than just being spectators. Moreover, teaching for empowerment is just more effective. Our goal in all of this, as I'm sure many of you can agree, is change. We need to change in order to tackle the climate crisis, and empowerment is what leads to the action that is behind change. It's also simply leads to better retention and is more interesting when you are actively engaging students, showing them how they fit into the picture, and urging them to do actual actions and making them feel like these are effective. They're going to remember what you're saying more, and they're going to be a lot more interested as you're teaching it, which I'm sure any teachers in the crowd would like to have their students remember more of what they say and be more interested while they're talking. So this is all very important if we want to achieve our goal, which is a generation that's prepared for climate change and actually ready to take action. To achieve this goal and actually prepare students for the future, we need to be empowering them to start acting now. That's why climate and empowerment in climate education cannot be peripheral. It can't just be another checklist on our priorities for climate education. It really needs to be at the center of climate education. It has to be both the foundation of it as well as the goal that we are trying to reach. So now that we have said that empowerment is so important, how can teachers actually empower students in the classroom? Well, empowering lessons are, for one, local. They focus on climate on a local level, both the problems and solutions that exist in whatever town or region that you're in. On this level, students are grounded and they can actually see where they're making a difference. Globally, it's very theoretical, and any action students take, they don't often see the results because the results are very cumulative, but local, they can see it more directly, and this is empowering. Additionally, empowering lessons are current. They focus on the present and not the far future. This means focusing on what students can do today with their current level of power, not what the power they will gain when they're adults, the power that they'll have to choose future careers, maybe future majors, because for many young people, when you tell them these things, it is, again, very theoretical for them. It feels far in the future for us. So we need to focus on showing students the power they have as they are. And it's much more likely for them to take action in this way. Empowering lessons are also action-based. They stress actions that are achievable for students themselves, things that are feasible, and that, again, show the difference that students can make with their current level of power. They focus on real and specific actions, not just science. So science is very, very important, something theoretical or very broad ideas. Going hand in hand with this is hands-on activities, which are they actively engage students in real work. This is the best to prepare them for the future, and involving students in the process of real-world work will make them feel much more empowered to take that a step further and use those tools that they're taught to do so on their own. Empowering lessons are also cooperative. They have students working together and with their teachers. This gives students more responsibility, which is a form of empowerment in of itself. And it also teaches students in a controlled environment the skills they'll need to take charge outside of school. This makes students feel a lot more capable to go and take those same steps on their own, which of course we need if we're ever going to have action and change. We also need to be teaching climate as intersectional. The beauty about climate education is it is this way by nature. Students are already passionate about a wide variety of issues and subjects, so we want to show students how climate intersects with their own areas of expertise, because this makes them feel more capable and more ready to engage. If it's not something they're interested in or something they feel familiar with, they're going to have a hard time engaging. But if you tell them, you're already familiar with this, you already know how it works in your specific area that you already care about, it's much more likely for them to feel like they can engage with it on a deeper and real level. And then finally, probably the most important thing to take away if you forget everything else that I've said here, and something many other people have mentioned, is to be inspiring and to be positive. Environmental issues have a terrible rep for being all doom and gloom. However, students, we need hope if we're ever going to feel like we have power in the situation and any reason to engage in the first place. Therefore, empowering lessons need to be solutions oriented. They can't only focus on climate issues and climate problems.
Thank you.
If I reached time limit, thank you for listening.
Very well done, Swan. Thank you. Nicely done. So I gave up my time to Swan because she was doing such a good job. So we're going to break from panel discussion as individual presentations, take 5 minutes. Anything that any of the panelists want to say now that they've heard the other people speak, any additional comments you want to make, now's the time to do it. Take it away.
I just wanted to emphasize something that Svan said. In answer to the question, what works, educating for sustainability works. Educating about unsustainability doesn't work. Not by itself. Obviously, people need to understand what needs to change in order to make the changes. But if we just leave them with the bad news and the issues, it's not enough to get people to. It puts people in what we call the away state, or what the brain scientists call the threat state, and they shut down. So I just wanted to reemphasize that. And then one other thing, in answer to your original question, what needs to change? I think I do a lot of work in building assessments for learning on climate and education for sustainability. And I think if we can begin to look at student work as evidence of what we think they need to know and be able to do specifically, I'm not talking about more tests, but more assessments, more projects and student work samples, and focus on that as one of the outcomes we're committed to. I think things will shift a lot faster.
Harriet, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I think we've heard all different sides to what needs to be done, what's already being done, and I think for us here in New Jersey and elsewhere, as well as also listening to what students want, what's important for young people growing up in a climate emergency, and how do we incorporate that and not assume that we already have it or understand. And so I think that that was very made very clear as well by our student representative Svan today. And we have the people, we have the resources, we have the information, and I think here in New Jersey, and it's organizing it, it's putting it together in an accessible way, right? There's so much there, from the information that we saw from Carrie at Rutgers to the incredible programs at Duke, to the kind of training that Jamie does, to the organizing that students are doing. But how can we find it, and how do we, as busy teachers, as parents, as concerned citizens, as school district representatives, right? We each have a role living in a community to make sure that climate is taught as a class, and to push that forward. So I think that we've had a very nice round look at what exists, and it's very rich in its information and knowledge and people here in New Jersey. I think I'd like to see how we organize it in an accessible way for our educators and for communities to be able to say that this is here and you can access it.
Carrie, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to echo definitely what Harriet just said, and the other thing that really struck me when in Nora's presentation, when she just said we're not dealing with the deniers, and I think a lot of people spend so much time trying to convince that other people that this is happening, and here's the facts and things. It's really about, let's just move forward. We're accepting it's happening. What can we do? And I think I loved all of the examples of the ways to kind of conceptualize climate change that Jamie mentioned, and all the different audiences that Svan and Harriet and Nora mentioned, and the ways to really engage these different communities with climate change, which is essential. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nora, do you want to close out your part of it?
Sure. This was a fantastic opportunity to learn what other people are doing throughout the state. I think we're all very passionate in different ways, trying to get out as much information about climate change and climate change education. I think that you can see some themes emerging throughout the thread of empowerment, of hope, of inspiration, of connection. of intersectionality. I mean, this is very helpful to me. I thank all of you for coming together and talking about this because this is important. But thank you.
Thanks. Swan, you want to close this part out completely?
Yeah. So really the thing that I got from listening to all of you speak, it was great, is that I constantly wanted to write down things you were saying or copy and paste resources. And that is really the thing about working with climate education or really any issue like that. If you're coming from a place like me where you don't have a lot of experience and you are just starting out, there are so many resources out there, and many of us have access to a lot of these and are sharing them. This is just one of many, many webinars out there talking about climate education. But if you are just entering this for the first time, it can be very overwhelming and you don't really know where to look. So really what we need to be focused on is not just creating these new resources, learning more. It's on figuring out a way to organize these on a way that is regular from place to place, that no matter where you are in New Jersey, you have access to the same things in an organized manner. Everyone is learning basic things they need to learn. And that really, like that mandate from the state really helps to start doing that on a uniform level across the state, but it also is not nearly enough because it's not really, teachers are not getting the stuff to back it up. So it's kind of, they put out the statement that they want to do something, but they haven't actually started taking the action. So what we need to do is start taking all these great stuff that we've talked about here today and all of these resources in a great way of talking about and teaching climate change and put it in a way that's understandable to students and also to teachers who are trying to do this for the very first time.
Nice, very nice. Thank you, folks. I think that was a decent set of presentations that we had, covered a lot of ground. So we're at 7:25 almost. Do you folks game to do breakout rooms, or should we just move to the discussion piece of it? We could break out for 15 minutes and come back for 15, or we could leave the breakout rooms out of this and just spend time together here, have a conversation.
I think breakouts are a great idea,
Okay,
personally.
okay.
Yes,
So I'm going to
I do
activate.
too. I agree, Jamie.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to say there's 3 breakout rooms that I've set up. I'm going to activate them now. And my understanding of the system is you'll then get a chance to pick which room you go to. I'll stay outside. I might come into each of the rooms a little bit.
Bonnie, you're echoing. Bonnie, you're echoing.
Somebody has. Hang on.
What?
Okay, it shouldn't be there now. I just muted everyone. Okay, so 3 breakout rooms, one for schools, one for community, one for higher ed. First thing you do is pick a note taker or a facilitator or whatever you want to call that person. Somebody that keeps a record of what happens in that room. Second thing you do is come up with 3 actions that you think are imperative at the level of schooling that you're talking about. Pre-K through 12, community, higher ed. 3 things that absolutely need to happen if climate change needs to become pervasive across the board. I'll give you 15 minutes to do this. We'll come back and we'll close it out a little sooner than we thought. Good?
Did you ask me to come back?
No, I hadn't set up the rooms yet. I've set them up now.
Oh,
Okay.
when I hit breakout sessions, the list of 3 came, so I just hit K-12 and I
Well,
was
hopefully,
somewhere. I don't know
yeah,
where I
you were.
was.
That must have been right. That's the way to do it. So
Okay, good. All right, so
menu bar across the top.
hit breakout sessions and then pick your session.
I've never used this platform before. Where is the option to join?
So at the top, there's like a toolbar, file, edit, share, and so forth. If you hit breakout sessions, you'll see join a breakout session, and then that takes you to the 3 different kinds of sessions.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I just learned myself.
Thank you, Jamie.
Ashwini, I don't see it. I joined online and I don't see any toolbar.
Right across the top, there's
Yeah,
a menu bar that says WebEx Meetings, top left corner.
no, it's not showing up for me.
You have the application in the forefront.
Yeah.
Okay. There should
I
be
mean,
a
I have the mute button, I have everything else, but I
down below.
don't see.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's fine.
so,
That's fine. But you have to go up to the top.
yeah.
The menu bar for the application itself. It should say file, edit, share, stuff like that. And one of them is
Yeah,
breakout session. Okay.
I
Let me
don't
see
see
if I
it.
can do it for you.
Maybe I'm just missing something, but I don't see anything here.
Hang on. Let me see if I can do this. Where do you want to go, Gerard?
To the higher end, I guess.
So those of you that haven't chosen a breakout room, are you having problems or do you rather stay out here?
Having problems with figuring out where there's a menu on the iPhone.
Oh, you're on a phone. Okay, let me see if I can help. I've never used an iPhone, so I can't say that I know it. But is there an application menu somewhere?
I don't have that toolbar either at the top
Okay, are you on a phone or a PC?
on the PC.
Okay, so if you bring the Cisco WebEx meetings window to the front, then across the top you should get, I can move you.
I don't
That's
see
okay.
it.
I'll do it. I can't see, that's Jan, was that you?
Yeah.
Okay. Jan, it didn't work.
No.
Jan, try this. Across the bottom where it says mute, stop video, share, recording,
Yeah.
to the right of that, there are 3 icons. The head and torso of a person, bubble thing for talking, and then 3 dots.
Yeah.
If you click on the person bubble space, it should give you a drop-down menu.
Yeah,
on the
Q&A.
right-hand side. Yep. Pick the one you
Q&A.
want.
Well, I have Q&A and notes.
If you click on the head and the shoulders, it should take you to the participant list.
Yeah, okay.
Then you can just join whichever room you want.
Ah, gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. Good luck. Ricky,
Thanks.
do you want to go into breakout room or rather stay here?
Ashwini, I'm looking at the participant list. It says that breakout sessions have started and the host will assign you to a session. So I'm wondering on the phone if that means you can't go into a session yourself, you have to be assigned one.
It could be. Let me see what I can do. 1 second.
Okay.
And which one do you want to go to, Ricky?
Probably higher ed makes more sense.
Okay.
Ah, see, there you go. Now I can join.
Excellent.
That was magic. Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else? Kathleen, Kit, Abbott?
I'm staying out.
Okay. Is there a motivation for that or?
Oh, I'm Swan's grandmother.
Nicely done.
I'll just let her be.
Okay.
I'll listen
We
to
can
the
have fun.
results. Thank you.
I'm glad you could make it.
Yep. I've enjoyed it.
Good.
Thank you.
Yep. We'll start a conversation in a minute. Just let me talk to Kathleen and Albert. Kathleen, Albert, do you want to take a breakout room or would you rather stay here? No, I guess they moved out. So, Kit, tell me about yourself.
Ashwani, my name is Susan Golden. Hi. I
Hi.
haven't met you before. As long as we're waiting, you mentioned earlier on how to keep notes for multiple breakout rooms, and I attend another workshop that meets
Okay.
every month, and they create a Google Doc, and they just pre-write breakout room 1, breakout room 2, breakout room 3, and have everyone's log into that Google Doc, and then somebody, they have a scribe or whatever, a note taker, but they're all writing on that same doc simultaneously.
Excellent idea.
So
if I were more organized than I am, we would have done that here too. Maybe next time. I'll take it into account.
Susan, I think Ron was talking about recording, like actually like making a video of the breakout rooms. Like I don't know if the technology allows that yet.
I know in Zoom you can have individual people's like attendees or co-hosts. They can record what's in the breakout room. So if you have like one person in each breakout room, click record. I don't know though if you do it here, participants can record. Maybe you have to make people co-hosts.
We did lose a lot of people's faces when the recording started. So which is something to bear in mind. Not everybody wants to be recorded.
True. But I have a rotten memory, so I need an aid to my memory.
Agreed.
Which is why I record them.
But Susan, I liked that idea. I jumped in at the tail end of that, having everybody document on the same Google Doc.
Yeah,
so we can all see
Jamie,
each other's.
it wasn't, I was sharing it, but just, I can't take credit for it. It's somebody else's idea at a workshop I attend.
Good. I still like it.
Okay. I think everybody's back. Okay. We're at 7:50, so we have 10 minutes left if you're going to end on time. Any thoughts on how you'd like to proceed? You want to have just a report out for each one person from each room? Highlights? Is that okay?
Yeah, start a report out, yes.
Okay. So could we start with schools?
One minute each. 1 minute report out each.
Go, Danielle.
All right, we came up with about 5 ideas. The first would be it would be about how kids need to have hands-on opportunities through the curriculum to make authentic changes within their own communities, like teaching them about local issues and then giving them an opportunity to participate in like making a change and fixing those local issues. So the curriculum should be customizable based on the local issues. Second is that we need to focus on community partnerships, like encouraging kids to then involve their families and friends so that we can like move outwards in terms of like the reach of this education. The third is that an integrated curriculum is essential. We can't just keep adding things, we have to integrate them. Then teachers will have the time to accomplish these. And the fourth one would be that we need to make the feedback and results of this education visible. So like give young people the ability to track data related to like climate issues or what they're studying, and that will motivate them. And then the fifth one is that it is critically important to enable children to have like a variety of ways to solve these problems instead of presenting one correct way, because that will encourage them to be creative and find more solutions. And the more solutions we have going on, the better.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Nicely done. Nicely done. So community informal education, do you guys want to go next?
Sure. I took notes.
Excellent.
Excellent. So we talked about a couple things. It was we talked because community education is complicated. We talked about how community involvement needs to happen, citizen science opportunities, more opportunities for hands-on citizen science to get people involved. Expose and engage outdoors, kids to the outdoors and provide a welcoming environment so that people understand beautiful and appreciate beautiful places, but that they feel welcome there. We also talked about unlearning or changing beliefs and how we keep politics out of that conversation, and we should talk about co-benefits rather than talk about politics and unlearning. And then we also, the last thing that we talked about is that the people in power should take a proactive approach to reach out and to assist, educate, and engage and inform and provide power to those who do not have power. So we talked about that.
Good, thank you. And higher ed?
You're on mute.
No, you're still muted.
Unmute.
Got it. Thank you very much. We had a very lively discussion and wonderful ideas flowing. Interestingly enough, some of them intersect with the other reports that have just been given as well. So the first point we said was an infusion model, that we really need to infuse the issues of sustainability and climate change across the curriculum. And depending on the culture of the institution, sometimes one needs resources for that. Perhaps it could be a donor, perhaps there would not necessarily be financial resources needed, but there's lots of opportunities for training programs in New Jersey and an opportunity for us to share among us some of the ways that we are doing this on our own campuses. So that's extremely important to all of us. Secondly, very much what you mentioned, a project-based way that people can have hands-on opportunities to not only develop ideas in the environment, but also to look around the environment, because their home area, their campus, is a living laboratory. And how can we really develop programs and develop research projects, develop interesting projects that students can have on their own campuses and learn about nature around them, and make it part of courses, but also make it part of some of the co-curricular and extracurricular. And the third point was very interesting, because we are positive people. We want to be positive, but at the same time, we're concerned about a balance so that our students and our colleagues are aware of, first of all, of the facts, the scientific facts in all of this area of study. And at the same time, once they understand it, to also face the reality, not in a way that's fearful, not in a way that's negative, but rather in a way that leads to action-oriented programs, activities, and the empowerment that was so beautifully mentioned by our West Orange High School student. And certainly, I think, I'll just add this myself, I think we would all agree, the future is wonderful. We have our own Greta right here at West Orange High School, and I think we're very, very fortunate to do that. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything to our group. Okay.
Nicely done. Nicely done. Okay, so we're now 5 minutes away from the end. I'm not going to say much because you guys did some excellent work in your breakout rooms. So if you send me your notes, I'll compile everything into one document and I'll share it back out to everyone. There'll be other material that we'll put up as well. If the speakers are okay with it, their PowerPoints will go up there as PDF files, and a list of, no, maybe not a list, but if you want to get in touch with the entire group for any reason, send me the message and I'll get it out to everyone. That fair?
I don't mind giving my actual deck as long as you give attribution. Because if you want to show it to somebody, the PDF might not be as useful as the actual slides. So if people want the actual slides, just let me know.
I guess I would just add that this is hard stuff and we need each other.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard stuff.
Not as hard as unsustainability. This is joyful work.
Mm-hmm. And it's, in Jersey City, there's a huge push now to deal with issues of sustainability. I'm a certified tree mapper. I mean, and so we're going around tree mapping with students as well as with colleagues. And that may sound strange, but it isn't. I mean, I've discovered things around the campus. And again, as I mentioned to our group, we're only 25 acres, but we have a lot more beautiful things than we ever realized. So working with your respective communities, also, I don't know the relationships, obviously, with your own campuses, but we're in the city. So obviously we are in and of the urban environment. And so we try to work with the city as well. And Jersey City has a director of sustainability now, which is very helpful for us.
So there is one other thing that I think I should throw out as a resource. There's an effort underway with a number of stakeholders involved to look at the mandate and see what we can do, what we can contribute as tools to help teachers come up to speed on the mandate. If that work interests you at the level of the state, send me an email and I'll introduce you to the group and we can see if it's a good fit for you and you can join us. We meet once a month and we do actionable stuff. We talk about ideas, resources, helping the DOE get this thing in front of them. And it's a useful conversation. It's a useful conversation. Anybody else? Final thoughts?
Well, just this one thought, opening eyes is scary. It's, there's no way around it, okay? You see things that you didn't think were there, and all of a sudden you realize are. And it's inherently scary, and that's why I think it's so important to give people something they can do to see a positive difference. So they can, get the fact that if everyone just does a little something, we can make a difference. It's scary, but it's, we can make a difference.
Yeah, and I would like to say that economic access, economic, personal economic confines dictate how much access people have to services, to information, to education, to conversations. Biden is the first president to be proposing to put a lot of money into broadband connectivity, making it available to all levels of Americans. I know that some people in certain urban buildings cannot get broadband services in their entire building, in their whole apartment building. And other families, when people are meeting in person, they can't afford to get to these to meetings because they don't have enough money, or if they want to go and they have children, they can't leave the children at home. So these are all considerations that can be thought of, including language considerations as well, that could include a lot more people in conversations.
Yeah, it's so important to remember what Jamie said about, we have a system that produced exactly the results that it was designed to. And we're talking about the science, but you know what? The social and the economic system that we have right now is exactly designed to screw the environment.
Well, I think it's designed, it might be more designed to benefit big business and not be concerned with the needs of average citizens.
Like I said, it's exactly designed to screw us and the environment.
Okay.
Maybe kind is not the right word because really it was such a collaborative effort that no one person could really see what all the effects were when it was being established. So that makes it not really the smartest system.
Exactly, but we collectively designed it over a long period of time. The hopeful thing is that, so that's a human creation. We can change it.
True, very true. Okay, so I'm going to close this out. If you want to continue the conversation, send me an email. We'll figure out a way of doing that. Okay. Thank you, folks, for coming. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for organizing.
Thank you. Thank you, Ash. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.